The plasma storm rolled across the ash fields like the wrath of dying gods, painting the perpetual twilight sky in sheets of electric violet. Kavira pulled her thermal cloak tighter as she crouched behind a jagged obsidian outcrop, her pale, purple skin already feeling the familiar bite of charged particles in the air. Her dark curls whipped around her face as she adjusted her breathing apparatus and checked her scanner one more time. Nothing. Just the usual radiation signatures and electromagnetic chaos. That made Drixara the graveyard of the galaxy. She'd been patrolling the outer wastelands for 3 rotations now, following reports of debris falling from the void. Probably another foolish trader who thought they could cut through Drexra's atmosphere to save time on their shipping route. The wreckage would be scattered across kilometers of scorched rock by now, along with whatever remained of the crew stupid enough to attempt it. The storm intensified, and Kavira prepared to retreat to her shelter when her scanner chimed. A heat signature, moving against the wind about 2 kilometers northeast. She frowned at the readings. Too large to be a scavenger beast, too small to be a crashed shuttle still burning. Maybe a survivor after all. Kavira pushed herself up from her crouch, fighting against the howling gale. As the daughter of High Elder Vexandra, she had a duty to investigate any potential threats to Drixari territory, even if it meant trudging through a plasma storm that could fry most beings down to their bones. She activated her suit's full environmental protection and began making her way across the treacherous terrain, her boots finding purchase on surfaces that had been glass-smooth stone. Just hours before the storm hit, the scanner led her through a maze of twisted metal spires, the fossilized remains of some ancient catastrophe that had helped forge Drixara into the hellscape. It was today. The heat signature grew stronger, more defined. Definitely humanoid, definitely alive, and definitely moving with purpose rather than the desperate stumbling of someone dying slowly. Kavira crested a small ridge and froze. Below her, walking through the storm like he was taking a casual stroll through a garden, was a figure she'd never expected to see on Drixara. Bipedal, roughly her height, but clearly not Drixari. His skin wasn't the pale purple of her people, but a sun-darkened tan that spoke of a different kind of harsh world. He wore no environmental suit, no breathing apparatus, just a long, tattered coat that whipped around his legs as he walked. A human. Kavira had studied the species in her tactical briefings, supposedly one of the younger races, originating from a world called Earth that was considered mildly hazardous at best. Soft creatures who needed artificial environments to survive in most conditions. Yet here was one walking through a plasma storm that would cook a Valdorian in minutes. She watched, transfixed, as he paused near a cluster of heat-cracked boulders and seemed to be examining something on the ground. Lightning crackled overhead, illuminating his face for a moment. Angular features, stubbled jaw, and what looked remarkably like a grin. Kavira made her decision and began her descent, her weapon ready but not drawn. As she approached, the human looked up, showing no surprise at her appearance. His eyes were a strange pale blue, like the ice formation she'd heard existed on some distant worlds. "You lost?" she called out in standard Galactic, her voice amplified through her suit's speaker to cut through the storm. The human straightened up, brushing dust from his hands. "Nah," he said, his accent unfamiliar but his tone remarkably casual. "Just looking for shade." Kavira stared at him, certain she'd misheard. Shade in a plasma storm? He shrugged, apparently unbothered by the fact that he was having a conversation with an armed alien in the middle of one of the most dangerous weather phenomena in known space. "Well, shelter then. Shade's hard to come by on this rock." "This rock," Kavira said slowly, "is Drixara. It's killed everything that's ever tried to colonize it. The atmosphere alone should have dissolved your lungs by now." The human she could see now that he was covered in burns, cuts, and a thick layer of volcanic ash. Tilted his head thoughtfully. "Huh. Feels a bit like home, actually. Bit warmer." Maybe for the first time in her adult life, Kavira was speechless. This creature was standing in an environment that her own people, evolved specifically for Drexra's brutality, found challenging. He should be dead. By all the laws of biology and survival she knew, he should be a desiccated corpse. Instead, he was making conversation, Thunder crashed overhead, and the human glanced up with mild interest. "Storm's getting worse. You know anywhere we can wait this out?" Kavira led the impossible human through the maze of crystalline formations toward her patrol bunker. Stealing glances at him as they walked, Carter he'd introduced himself with that strange human custom of offering personal names to strangers, moved across the treacherous terrain with surprising grace, where she had to carefully test each step on the storm-slicked obsidian. He seemed to instinctively know which surfaces would hold. "Watch the," she started to warn him about a particularly unstable ledge. "Yeah, I see it," he said, already stepping around the hazard. "Reminds me of the glass fields back home after a bad storm season." Glass fields. Kavira filed that information away. What kind of world produced glass fields from storms? Her bunker was a modest affair, reinforced Drexari steel sunk deep into a natural cave formation. It had been built to withstand the planet's worst tantrums, and as they sealed themselves inside, the sound of the storm became a distant roar. Kavira activated the atmospheric processors and removed her breathing apparatus, watching Carter carefully for any signs of distress. He took a deep breath and nodded approvingly. "That's better. Bit thin out there, even for me." Thin. Kavira pulled off her thermal cloak, revealing the form-fitting suit beneath. "The atmospheric density is nearly 3 times standard. The chemical composition should have, could have, would have." Carter interrupted with that maddening grin. "I'm still breathing. So I guess your planet and I have come to an understanding." Kavira studied him in the bunker's harsh lighting. The burns on his exposed skin looked recent, but were already forming scar tissue. His clothes were shredded in places, revealing more of that sun-darkened skin marked with old injuries that spoke of a lifetime of surviving things that should have killed him. "You said you crashed," she said, settling into her monitoring station. "How long ago?" "For days. Maybe 5. Hard to tell with the weird sun situation you've got going on here." Carter examined the bunker's interior with professional interest. "Nice setup, military, patrol outpost. I monitor the outer territories for my clan." Kavira hesitated, then added, "I'm supposed to report any off-world survivors to the council." Carter's expression didn't change, but she noticed his posture shift slightly. "And are you going to?" The question hung in the recycled air between them. Kavira found herself studying his face, trying to read the emotions behind those strange, pale eyes. Fear, resignation, she couldn't tell. "That depends," she said finally. "What are you really doing here, Carter?" He leaned against the bunker wall, seemingly unbothered by the fact that his life might depend on her answer. "I was a long-haul freight pilot. Contracts in the Outer Rim, mostly. Ship started falling apart in your system, old bucket of bolts. But she was mine. Managed to get down mostly in one piece. But the calm ray was fried and the distress beacon went dark. So you started walking. What else was I going to do? Sit there and wait to die?" He shrugged. "Besides, I figured if I could find civilization, maybe I could work out some kind of deal. I'm good with my hands, know my way around most tech." Kavira activated her bunker's external sensors, checking the storm's progress. "Civilization on Drexara isn't exactly welcoming to outsiders. We've never had off-worlders survive long enough to make it an issue. First time for everything." Carter moved to the small viewport, gazing out at the lightning-illuminated wasteland. "This is really all there is? No green spaces, no water. There are underground rivers, thermal springs in some areas, but nothing like what I've seen in the databases about other worlds." Kavira found herself joining him at the viewport. "My people evolved here. We're adapted to survive what nothing else can, except humans." Apparently, she looked at him sideways. "You're one human, and you're injured. These," Carter gestured at his burns, "just surface stuff. The real damage is what you can't see." Something in his tone made her study his profile more carefully. "What do you mean, radiation exposure? Probably some heavy metal poisoning from breathing your air for days. Definitely some cellular damage from the electromagnetic storms." He spoke matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather. "I figure I've got maybe a week before the cumulative effects start shutting down major organs." Kavira stared at him. "You're dying. We're all dying. Sweetheart." Some of us just have a better idea of the timeline. The casual endearment sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. She'd never heard that particular human expression before, but something about the way he said it fond rather than dismissive made her pulse quicken. There might be treatments, she said quickly. Drixari medicine is advanced. We've had to develop ways to counteract environmental damage. Carter turned from the viewport, and for the first time since she'd met him, his expression was entirely serious. Why would you help me? The question caught her off guard. Why would she? He was an alien, a potential threat to her people, a walking contradiction to everything she'd been taught about survival and adaptation. But looking at him now, seeing the quiet acceptance in his eyes and the way he'd faced his situation with humor, rather than despair, she realized she didn't want to watch him die. Because, she said slowly, I think there's more to humans than we've been told, and I'd like to find out what that is. Carter's grin returned, but softer this time. In that case, Kavira of the Drixari, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. The storm passed during the night cycle, leaving the wasteland eerily quiet. Kavira woke to find Carter already awake, sitting by the viewport with a small device in his hands. Her communication equipment lay in carefully organized pieces around him. What are you doing? She demanded, reaching for her sidearm. Relax, Carter said without looking up. I'm fixing it, not breaking it. Your quantum resonator was misaligned, probably from the electromagnetic interference. Hand me that blue crystal there. Kavira hesitated, then picked up the component he'd indicated. How do you know about Drixari communications technology? Same principles as most quantum entanglement systems, just better insulated. He accepted the crystal and slotted it into place with practiced ease. I've worked on similar setups before. The outer rim isn't exactly rich in standardized equipment. You learn to adapt. She watched him work, noting the precise movements of his hands and the way he seemed to understand the technology. Intuitively, when he finished, her comm unit powered up with a clear signal for the first time in days. That's impossible, she said, staring at the display. The interference patterns in this region are predictable once you map them. Carter handed her the device. Your people probably have automated systems that compensate, but when you're doing it manually, you need to think like the storm. Kavira activated the unit and was rewarded with a clear connection to the nearest relay station. The message that came through made her blood run cold. All patrol units, be advised. Seismic activity indicates major volcanic event imminent in sectors 7 through 12. Evacuation protocols are in effect. Acknowledge receipt. She looked at Carter, who was already pulling on his tattered coat. How bad is major volcanic event? He asked. Bad enough that we need to reach the emergency bunker in Sector 9. It's a day's hard travel from here. Kavira began gathering her equipment. The alternative is staying here and being buried under a few thousand tons of molten rock. Molten rock it is then. Carter shouldered his small pack. Lead the way, sweetheart. They emerged from the bunker into a transformed landscape. The storm had carved new channels through the rock formations and left behind a coating of electrically charged dust that made the air shimmer. Kavira's scanner showed the seismic activity building steadily. They had perhaps 18 hours before the eruption reached their location. The journey began well enough. Carter matched her pace easily, and she found herself appreciating his company in ways that surprised her. He asked intelligent questions about the terrain, shared stories about his travels that made her laugh, and somehow managed to maintain his good humor despite the fact that they were literally racing death across an alien HELSCAPE. It was when they reached the Skara massive canyon carved by ancient lava flows that their situation became truly desperate. The bridge is gone, Kavira said, staring at the twisted remains of the metal span that had once connected the canyon walls. The storm must have weakened the supports. Carter peered over the edge into the glowing depths below. How deep? 3 kilometers, maybe more. She consulted her scanner. The bottom is molten. Even if we could climb down, we'd never make it back up the other side. What about going around? Adds 2 days to the journey. We don't have that long. Kavira felt panic beginning to creep into her voice. She'd never been trapped like this before. Never faced a situation where her training and equipment weren't enough. Carter was quiet for a long moment, studying the canyon walls with that intense focus she was beginning to recognize. Finally, he pointed to a series of natural formations on the opposite side. Those ledges, they're not random, are they? They follow the old lava flows. Kavira looked where he was pointing. Yes, and there's a thermal updraft from the molten rock below, strong enough to carry a person, if they knew how to use it. You're talking about jumping. She stared at him. Carter, that's suicide. Even if you could somehow glide across. The landing would be rough, yeah. He shrugged out of his coat and began examining the fabric. But not impossible. I've done crazier things. This is insane. You'll die. Carter looked at her then, and his expression was entirely serious. Kavira, I've been dying since the moment I set foot on this planet. But you've got people who care about you. A whole life ahead of you. I'm not going to let you die. Because I was too afraid to take a chance. Something in his voice made her chest tight. Carter. Besides, he said, his grin returning, I'm from Earth. We specialize in doing the impossible. Before she could stop him, he'd fashioned a crude wing from his coat and was positioning himself at the canyon's edge. Kavira grabbed his arm. Don't do this, please. There has to be another way. He covered her hand with his free one, his skin warm against hers. Trust me, sweetheart. I've got this. And then he was gone, launching himself into the void with a whoop of pure adrenaline-fueled joy. Kavira watched in horror and fascination as he caught the thermal updraft, his improvised wing catching the superheated air and carrying him across the chasm in a controlled fall that defied every law of physics she knew. He landed hard on the opposite ledge, rolling to absorb the impact, and lay still for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then he was up, waving at her with his usually reverent grin. Your turn. He called across the canyon. Kavira stared at him, her heart pounding. The human was either the bravest person she'd ever met or completely insane, possibly both. But as she prepared to follow him into the impossible, she realized she was beginning to understand why Earth had produced legends. The emergency bunker was a fortress carved into the heart of an extinct volcano, its walls lined with heat-resistant alloys that could withstand the planet's most violent tantrums. Kavira and Carter had reached it with barely an hour to spare before the eruption began, and now they sat in the reinforced chamber listening to the mountain scream around them. How long do these usually last? Carter asked, checking the atmospheric readings on the bunker's displays. This one could be days, maybe a week. Kavira tried to keep her voice steady, but the isolation was getting to her. She'd never been trapped underground for this long with another person, let alone a human whose very presence challenged everything she thought she knew about survival. Carter nodded, accepting the situation with that maddening calm of his. Good thing we've got supplies. Good thing you fixed the water recycler, she replied, managing a smile. I've never seen anyone jury-rig a filtration system with bootlaces and a broken power cell. Necessity is the mother of invention. Besides, I learned a long time ago that the best survival tool is the one you make yourself. They'd been trapped for 3 days now, and Kavira had watched Carter work small miracles with the bunker's failing systems. Every time something broke down, he found a way to fix it with whatever materials were available. More than that, he'd shared stories of his travels, his life on Earth, the disasters he'd survived that had given him his encyclopedic knowledge of improvised solutions. Tell me about your world, she said, settling beside him on the narrow bench that served as seating. Really tell me, not the database entries. Carter was quiet for a moment, staring at the readings that showed the volcanic chaos raging outside. Earth is complicated, beautiful and terrible at the same time. We've got oceans that can swallow entire cities, storms that level forests, deserts that stretch beyond the horizon. But we've also got sunsets that'll make you cry, mountains that touch the clouds, and nights so clear you can see the whole galaxy spread out above you. His voice carried a longing that made Kavira's chest ache. You miss it every day. But I knew when I left that I might never make it back. Deep space freight isn't exactly a safe career path. He looked at her then, his pale eyes reflecting the bunker's emergency lighting. What about you? What's it like growing up on Drixara? Kavira considered the question. Harsh, demanding. Every day is a test of whether you're strong enough to see another one. But it's also honest. There's no room for pretense here, no. Way to hide from what you really are. And what are you really? The question caught her off guard with its directness. She found herself studying his face, looking for judgment or calculation, but finding only genuine curiosity. I don't know anymore, she admitted. I thought I was a warrior, a protector of my people. But watching you these past few days, you've shown me things I never imagined were possible. You've made me question everything I thought I knew about strength. Carter shifted closer, and she was suddenly aware of how small the bunker was, how the emergency lighting cast shadows that made his features look almost ethereal. Maybe strength isn't about what you can survive, he said quietly. Maybe it's about what you choose to do with whatever time you have. The volcanic rumble outside seemed to fade. As Kavira met his gaze, is that what you're doing? Choosing every moment since I met you. His voice was barely above a whisper. I could have died in that storm, could have given up when my ship crashed, but something kept me going. Maybe it was knowing that somewhere out there, someone like you was waiting. Kavira felt her breath catch. Carter, I know this is crazy, he continued, reaching out to touch her face with fingers that were surprisingly gentle. I know we're from different worlds, different species, but I've never felt more alive than I have these past few days. She leaned into his touch, her purple skin warming under his palm. My people would call this impossible. Your people haven't met humans. His thumb traced her cheekbone, and she shivered at the contact. We specialize in impossible. The space between them disappeared as she pressed her lips to his, tasting the strange sweetness of his breath and feeling the electric thrill of connection that transcended species. His arms came around her, pulling her closer, and she marveled at the strength in his embrace, not the brutal power of survival, but something gentler and infinitely more dangerous. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kavira rested her forehead against his. This changes everything, she whispered. Yeah, Carter agreed, his voice rough with emotion. It does. Outside, the mountain continued its violent dance, but inside the bunker, too, impossible beings had found something even more improbable than survival. They'd found each other. As they lay together on the narrow emergency cot, Kavira traced the scars on Carter's chest, a roadmap of survival written in pain and determination. Each mark told a story of a human who refused to give up, who found ways to keep going when logic said he should quit. Your people are going to want to study you, she said, her fingers following a particularly dramatic scar that ran from his shoulder to his ribs. Probably, your people are going to want to exile you for fraternizing with an alien. Maybe. Kavira smiled against his skin. But they'll have to catch us first. Carter's laughter rumbled through his chest. You know, sweetheart, I think you might be even crazier than I am. I learned from the best, she replied, lifting her head to meet his gaze. Besides, someone once told me that the best survival tool is the one you make yourself. And what have we made here? Kavira considered the question, thinking about the impossible human who'd walked into her life like he belonged there, who'd shown her that strength came in forms she'd never imagined. Something legendary, she said finally, and kissed him again as the mountain sang its ancient song around them. The rescue team found them 6 days later, when the volcanic activity finally subsided enough for search operations to resume. Kavira watched through the bunker's external monitors as 3 Drixari transports landed in the ash-covered clearing. Above, their heat signatures bright against the cooling rock. Showtime, Carter said, pulling on his rebuilt jacket. He'd spent the last day reinforcing it with materials from the bunker, turning it into something that might actually protect him from Drexra's atmosphere. Kavira checked her equipment one final time, but her hands were shaking. Carter, when we get back to the city, there's going to be questions. Lots of them. My father will want to interrogate you. The council will want to examine you, and the military will want to classify you as either a threat or a resource. And what do you want? He asked, taking her hands in his. I want to keep you safe. I want to show them that humans aren't the weak creatures they think they are. I want She struggled for the words. I want a future where this doesn't have to be impossible. Carter's smile was gentle but determined. Then that's what we'll build. Together. The bunker's communication system crackled to life. Patrol Leader Kavira, this is Rescue Alpha. Please respond. Kavira took a deep breath and activated the transmitter. This is Kavira. I'm alive and well. I have a situation that requires immediate council attention. Understood. We're sending down a team now. Prepare for evacuation. Within minutes, the bunker's outer doors cycled open, revealing 3 Drixari warriors in full environmental suits. Kavira recognized the lead figure's stance even through the armor commander Thexar, her father's most trusted military advisor. Kavira, Thexar's voice was tight with relief. When we lost contact, we feared the worst. The seismic activity was manageable. Kavira interrupted. Commander, I need to prepare you for what you're about to see. Thexar's helmet turned toward Carter, who stepped forward with his hands visible and his posture non-threatening. By the ancestors, the commander breathed. What is that? Not what? Kavira said firmly. Who? This is Carter Reyes, a human survivor. He's been instrumental in our survival. The other warriors raised their weapons, but Thexar held up a hand. A human here? That's impossible. A lot of things are impossible until they happen, Carter said pleasantly. Nice to meet you, Commander. I've heard a lot about Drixari military excellence. Thexar stared at him. It's speaking standard galactic. Kavira corrected sharply. And yes, he's intelligent, resourceful, and has survived 6 days on Drixara without environmental protection. I think the council will be very interested in what that means. The journey back to the city was tense. Carter sat calmly in the transport's passenger compartment, occasionally commenting on the landscape or asking questions about Drixari architecture. Kavira could see the warriors struggling to reconcile their preconceptions about humans with the reality of Carter's easy confidence. The city of Kethmern rose from the volcanic plains like a crown of crystalline spires, its buildings designed to channel and dissipate the planet's aggressive energy. As they approached the central complex, Kavira saw crowds gathering to catch a glimpse of the impossible human, popular guy. Carter observed, they've never seen anything like you. Kavira replied, most aliens who come here are found as desiccated, corpses within hours. Well, I've always enjoyed being unique. The council chambers were imposing a circular amphitheater carved from a single massive giada, its walls lined with the crystallized remains of extinct volcanic organisms. High Elder Vexandra sat at the center, her pale purple skin marked with the ritual scars of leadership, her dark eyes fixed on Carter with intense scrutiny. Daughter, she said as Kavira and Carter approached the speaking platform. Explain. Kavira straightened her shoulders. Honored Elder, this is Carter Reyes of Earth. His ship crashed in the outer territories 6 days ago. He survived the wasteland, a plasma storm, and a major volcanic event. He's also repaired our equipment, shared survival techniques, and proven that humans are far more resilient than we believed. Resilient, Vexandra repeated, or contaminated with some disease that makes them immune to our world's defenses. With respect, Honored Elder, Carter said, stepping forward. I'm not immune to anything. I've taken significant cellular damage from the radiation, probably have heavy metal poisoning, and I'm pretty sure I've got at least 3 different types of chemical burns. But I'm also still standing, still thinking, and still capable of contributing to the survival of both our species. The Elder's eyes narrowed. Contributing how? Carter gestured to the chamber around them. Your people have mastered survival in one of the galaxy's harshest environments. Mine have mastered adaptation to hundreds of different worlds. Imagine what we could accomplish working together. You speak of cooperation. Another council member interjected. But humans are known for their aggressive expansion, their tendency to exploit resources. Some humans, yes, Carter agreed. Just like some Drixari are probably warlike, and some are peaceful. But I'm not here representing humanity's government or military. I'm here as one person who's learned to appreciate what your people have accomplished. Kavira watched the exchange with growing hope. Carter was handling the interrogation perfectly, showing respect without subservience, confidence without arrogance. And what of you, daughter? Vexandra's attention turned to Kavira. What do you recommend? Kavira took a deep breath. I recommend we establish a cultural exchange program. Carter has skills and knowledge that could benefit our people, and we have survival techniques that could help humanity understand their own potential. I volunteer to serve as liaison. Liaison, the elder repeated, or something more personal. Heat flooded Kavira's cheeks, but she met her mother's gaze steadily. Mother, I've found something worth fighting for, something worth changing for. Isn't that what you always taught me leadership meant? Vexandra was quiet for a long moment, studying both of them. Finally, she spoke. Very well, the human will be granted provisional residence while we evaluate this exchange program. Kavira, you will be responsible for his integration and behavior. Thank you, honored elder. As they left the council chambers, Carter took Kavira's hand. So, what happens now? Kavira said, leading him toward the city's residential district. We show both our peoples that impossible things happen when you're brave enough to try, you know. Carter said, looking out over the crystal spires of Kethmaran. I think I'm going to like it here. Kavira smiled, thinking about the future they were building together one impossible day at a time. Welcome to Drigzara, Carter Reyes. Welcome home. In the distance, Drexer's twin suns set behind the volcanic peaks, painting the sky in shades of fire and hope. And in the heart of the Crystal City, two beings from different worlds began the delicate work of proving that love, like survival, was a choice that could change everything.